Hello guys, welcome to Good Do Micro Projects. Kindly check this application out. This is a random advice app. So when I click next advice, another advice pops up. In this video, we're going to develop this using React Hooks and Redux. If you want to type along with me, kindly install the following. 1. npm install Redux. 2. npm install React Redux. And 3. npm Redux install Redux DevTools extension. And 4. npm install appjs. So that is that, guys. Let's begin. Thank you very much. Let's begin by creating 3 folders in our SRC folder. So create the first one and call it assets. Then create another one and call it components. And create another one and call it Redux. Now let's do the first one, assets. Now the asset folder, let's create another folder and call it image. Now in the image folder, we need to put our image there. Now let's go to Google, grab some background image. So I did that, and this is the image I had. This is what I'm going to use. I just put it there. Good. So that is that with the image. Now that's that with the assets. Good. Now next is to go to components, create a folder and call it advice. Now inside the advice folder, let's create a file and call it advice app.js. So that is that for advice. So the advice with our boilerplate REFCE. Good. Instead of the ordinary D, why don't we make it React.fragment? Yeah. So inside that we can say h1 tag and say hello. Now let's link that to the app.js to view on the screen. So app.js, and we call it advice CE advice app. Good. Now advice app, let's import it. So we say import advice app from components advice and advice app. So that is that. Let's check our screen to see if there is any complaint. Great, we got hello on the screen. So this means that we're ready to go. So what to do next? Let's check the structure for the application. Now in this application, I want us to have if there's a card. Now inside the card, we're going to have the card header as usual. Then we have another card this way that will serve as the advice container, and then a button. Okay, something like this. But with our page setup, we're going to have, I call it 3, 6, 3. The first one, we're going to make it 3 columns, and then the second one 6, and the last one 3. So you're going to have it like this, 3, 6, 3 together, making 12 columns. That is that with a Bootstrap. So with all said and done, let's begin. So we can close the app.js, close the image tool, then go to advice app, take the h1 tag off and create our div. So we say div, give the class name, and call it to what? Give it to a row. Now inside the row, what do we need? We need the columns. So let's take a div and give it a class name and call md3. And just copy that. Second one we call md6. So we want to work in the 6th region. So this is where we're going to work. So to do that, let's give it a card. So we say div class name, class name equals card. So inside the card, we need what? Card header, card body. So inside the card, we need what? Card header. So I can just say yeah, card header and card body. Over here we can say card body. Okay, so that is that with the card. Now let's take the first one, card header. Yeah. Header, what do we need? We need h5 tag. I will say, I will give us the title of our application, which is what? Random advice app with JSON API. So that is that with the header. Let me take the body a little down. We can say body section. Good. Now let's check that out on the screen. Good. Now we can center it and give some margin top. So let's do that. To center it, I can go to CAD and say test center. Good. Then we give it some margin top. Row here, I can say empty 5. Then I go to the CAD tool and give it empty 5. So it could drop down more. Empty 5. Let's check it out. Good. Now let's make the heading bold. So we can just give it a class name here and say font weight bold. Yeah, good. Good. That is that. So that is that with the header. Now let's go to CSS and style the header more. So we say CSS, then we call the header, we say div card header bracket card header h5. Let's give it a font size of 25 pixels. So next thing to do is to add our background image. So to do that, we go to card and add our background image to the card. Okay, we go to our CSS, then we say card, we say background image URL. Let's call the image. It's an LSRC, it's an assets image, then bg1. Let's check that out. Great. Now let's make the color white. So we say before the white, let's give it a background repeat. We say no repeat. Next one, background size, we say cover. Good. The next one, we can say color white smoke. So that is that. Let's check that out again. Great. So next is to go to the body. So now let's check the body. We'll finish with the header. Let's go to the body section. Okay, body section. What do we need first? We need a container. So we call it advice container. So let's create a div to handle that. Div. Let's give it a class name and call it advice advice container. Good. Inside the advice container, let's give it a p tag and just put any advice there for now. We can say I am happy. Good. Okay. Let's check that out. Good. We have I'm happy. Now let's create the dimensions for the advice container. So over here we can say advice container bracket, give it the width. Let's call it, give it rather minimum weight. Minimum width, good. Minimum width 100 pixels. Then min height also 100 pixels. Then give it a background color. Let's say red, so we can see what we're doing. Great. Let's give some border radius. Let's say border radius 10 pixels. Next, let's give it a margin and box shadow. Okay, so we say margin auto, then box shadow, box shadow 0 on 15 pixels, then 60 pixels, and RGBA into bracket 0.5. Good. Let's check that out. Great. Now what we need to do is to center the I am happy. So let's do that. Now to do that, let's create a center CSS. So we say centered. Inside that we can say display flex, then justify content center, then align items center. So center, so we can just add center to the container. We go to the container, then add centered to it as a class name. Centered. Okay. Then the centered can be reusable when you do it this way. Okay, so let's check that out. Great. So we have I am happy at the center of the page. Good. Now next thing to do is to add the code. So to do that, let's go to p tag. Inside that p tag we can call our I class. So we can say I. Inside that, give it a class name, which is fa code left. Let's check that out. Great. So likewise do the right. So over here we'll say right. Let's check that out. Great. Now let's give it some CSS pattern. So we say go to CSS, then we call it, the class name is FA. Okay, so we go to CSS and we say dot FA. Let's give a pattern of 10 pixels. Then color or color of 0.0069. Let's check that out. Great. So that is that. The next thing is to take the red off and give it a button. Good. So we go take the red off. You can just comment it there. You can see that. Now let's give it a button. So button, we're going to get over here. Cut container, we're done with you. But cut body, we're done with you. So now next is what? Button section. So we say BTT on section. Good. So inside that we can say, give it a div and give it a class name and call it button container. You can just make it btn container. btn container. Good. Now inside a btn container we can have our button. Inside that we can give it a class name and call Bootstrap btn sm btn light. And inside that we have next advice. Let's check that out. Great. Now let's give some margin bottom to the container. So we say btn container. So I can just copy that and go to CSS. And just paste that, and we say margin bottom 30 pixels. Let's check that out. Great. So that is that, guys. I think now we are ready to fetch our API using Redux. So to do that, we can close everything, then go to our Redux folder. Now, to begin with Redux, let's create a file inside the Redux folder and call it store.js. Good. Now inside the same Redux folder, let's create another file and call it root reducer.js. Now in the same Redux folder, let's create another folder and call it advice Redux. Now inside advice Redux, let's create a file and call it advice.actiontypes.js. Inside the same advice Redux folder again, let's create another file and call it advice.actions.js. Inside the same advice Redux folder again, let's create another file and call it advice.reducer.js. So we have 3 folders in the advice Redux folder. We have 3 files in the advice Redux folder. Now let's take the advice.actiontypes and close all this so we can really see what you're doing. Advice.actiontypes. Now over here we're going to talk about the actions that we need. So we take the first one, export const load what data, loaded data request into bracket, the same thing. Just copy that, load data request. So we can just copy this 3 times for the success and failure. So the next one, load data success. Same thing here. Next one, load data failure. Like failure, yeah. So that is that for the data types. Now the next thing is to the actions. So let's go to actions. Now the actions, to begin with, we need to import our data types. So we say, import bracket load data request, comma, load data success. And the last one, load data failure from blah 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 from action types. Okay, so that is that. With the import, let me just rearrange it nicely. Okay, good, so we can see it. So next we can say, next we need to import still import attributes. Import attributes. Good. Attributes from attributes. Good, that is that. So now, so we're gonna say export const load data, okay, which is equal to a function. Good. I'll return what? Return async await. Good. To bracket to try and what? Catch. Try and catch. Good. So that is that. So let's take the first one, try. So try, we can say dispatch, and then inside that we can say dispatch what? Dispatch a type, dispatch a type called load data request. Good. Now let's get a URL. We say let data URL equal to now what's the URL? Let's go to our data URL. Yeah, this is the advice JSON API. So let's get our URL. You can see our URL. Get the slave ID and advice. So that is that. You can just copy this URL. Good. And we just paste it in there. Good. So that is the URL. So we say let response be equal to await and attributes dot get data URL. So from there we dispatch a type called what? Load data success. Load data success. Good. Come on. Payload response dot data and dot sleep. We added sleep to it because you can see that, how do I call it, the API has what? Sleep, so we added this to it, the response. So that's why we added the sleep. So next let's look at how to handle the error. Okay, so we say error bracket, let's dispatch what type what load data failure. Okay. Comma, and the payload error. So that is that with the advice.actions. Okay, good. So with this, we can move to the advice.reducer. Now, to begin with the advice.reducer, we need to import the action types. Again, we've already imported it in advice.actions, so we just go back there, copy, and take it to advice.reducer. Just paste it. So that is that. Now let's create a feature key in the store. Okay, so we say, so we say export const, let's call it advice key into bracket advice store. Okay, so we create a feature key in the store. So that is that. So next we can say let initial state be equal to let data be given an empty array and comma loading. We can say loading is what? False. Let's see again. Come on, and last one we say error message with the value empty string. So that's that with the initial state. Now we can now call our reducer. So we say export const advice reducer to bracket a function, and inside that we can say state equals initial state comma action. We can also say that let type comma payload equals to what? Action, to make things easier for switch statement. Okay, so we say switch to bracket type where the case is load data sucks request. Load data request. What do? Then return what? Return the state back. Come on. Then make loading true. That is that for case load data request. Now let's look at another case, load data success. So we say load data success. Okay. What do? Return the state back. Good. Now make loading false. Then last one, data, give it the payload. Okay, so that is that with the load data success. And let's learn the last one, load data failure. We say case load data failure. What do? Return the state back. And give the error message with the value payload. So that is that. Now let's return the default state. So we say default return state. So that is that for the advice.reducer. So next we go to we export the advice.reducer to the root reducer. Okay, so we go to the reducer, then import it. So we say import what? Advice reducer from advice reducer and advice.reducer. So that is that with the root reducer. We also need to import combine reducers from Redux here, like that. Good. Now finally we can select root reducer be equal to combine reducers into bracket what? Let's call the advice key. We say advice key. Good. Then give it a value advice reducer. So that is that. We can now export our root reducer. So over here we say export root reducer. Now export the root reducer to where? Export it to the store. Okay, so we go to the store and import our root reducer. So we say import root reducer from root reducer. That's it. So next we need to import create store from Redux. Also we need to import apply middleware again. And let's add that one too. Apply middleware from Redux. So from Redux we have create store and apply middleware from Redux. Next we need to import compose with DevTools. Compose with import with DevTools from Redux DevTools extension. So that is there. And lastly we need to import tank. We don't need a bracket, so we say tank from Redux tank, and that is that. So now let's begin. So we say let middleware, okay, middleware be equal to an array, and inside the array we can have our middlewares over there. So we have tank, we can add more middlewares later in the future. So we say let store equal to create store to bracket root reducer, comma, compose with DevTools into bracket with apply middleware into bracket. We call our middlewares now. So I just say, instead of calling tank, I just give it the middleware, then like that, to make it simple. So this middleware is what we have called here. So finally, we can just export our store. So we say export with store. Now export store to where? To the app.js. So we go to app.js, then import our store. So we say import store from where? From Redux and from store. That is that. We also need to import provider. So we say import provider from React Redux. React Redux. React Redux. So next, to wrap the provider around the component. So we say provider again. But inside the provider we can say store equals store. So just cut this side and take it down. That is that. Good. So that is that. Now let's check our screen to see if there is any complaint. Great, we have no complaint. So let's check our store to see if everything is being represented. Great, everything has been represented on the store. So meaning we are ready to fetch our API. Now next thing is to link the store to the component so that we can be able to fetch the API. So to do that, let's go to our advice app. We can close all this, we can close them and go to the component. We have advice.app and import use selector, import use selector, and come on, use dispatch from React Redux. Yeah, great. So next is to what? So next is to initialize the use dispatch. Okay, so we say initialize dispatch. So we say let dispatch equal to use dispatch Okay, so I'll use this patch. It's ready. Now I'll use this patch. It's ready. So now what we need to do is to call the dispatch. Now in this application, we plan to call in the dispatch to our button. So we need to give the button an on-click event. Okay, so we go to the button, then we give it an on-click event. So we say on-click, give us what click btn, click button. So let's create a function for click btn. So we come here and we say, let me just handle btn. So we say let's click btn be equal to a function. Then inside that function we can have our dispatch. Dispatch what? Dispatch. Let's go to actions to see what we are dispatching. We're going to dispatch load data. Okay, we're going to dispatch this load data. So let's go there and we say good. So dispatch load data function. Good. This load data will be called, and let's import the load data. Great, it has been imported for us already. Good. So that is that with the load data. Good. So now let's check our store if there's any API that has been called. So we go to our screen again, confirm it, then we fire the button. Now let's check our store. Great, we got data. We got data, guys. We got data in the store. So you can see we got data in the store when it was fired. So now what we need to do is to be able to view the store on the component. Okay, to view the store on the component. So how do we do that? We're going to do that using useSelector. So we say, let me make it view data from store. Okay, so inside that we can say let view advice, okay, be equal to useSelector. Now inside that, can you see? Inside that creates another function. Good. Do inside that we can say our state, which is going to return the state with a key. So we say advice key, advice key. Now we need to import the advice key. So go here, then say import. We say advice key. Advice key from where? No. From here, Redux. Yeah, okay. Advice key is in Redux. Then it's an advice Redux. Then it's an reducer. Good. Go and check it. You see the advice key over here again. The advice key is in Redux. So advice.reducer. So that is that. We have our advice key being imported. So now let's check how to view it using JSON. So we can just say right here, we call JSON, we say JSON dot stringify into bracket view advice. So let's check it out. Now let's give it a pre tag. Just say let's give it a pre tag. And inside that we can call our JSON. Good. Let's check that out on the screen. Good. So you can see when I fire next advice, we have our data being fetched. So over here we can see our data, we can see our ID and our advice. So next thing to do is to link the advice and put it in the container. So that is that. So let's do that. So instead of hard coding there, I am happy, we just change it to change it to, we say so view advice dot data dot advice. Let's check that out. Okay, so we can say view dot data dot advice. So let me fire it. See what I'm talking about. Yeah, we say view dot data dot advice. Okay, so that is that. You can see life is short, don't race till the finish. Next advice, you can see that. So that is that, guys. Now next thing is to take the pre-type off. Then our app is complete. Take the pre-type off. Where is the pre-type? Where are you? Okay, the pre-type. Comment it. And when I go back to the screen, good. When I fire it, tell everything matters, but nothing matters that much. You can see, guys. If I click next, caps. So that is that, guys. Thank you for sticking through. Don't forget to do good. Catch you in the next one. Bye.